Hi everybody, my name's Andrew and today I'm wearing a BMW t-shirt with my Audi. I don't know why either. Today we're going to be using something called OBDeleven. You may have heard of this before, it's pretty popular within the VW community. And we're going to be coating my new B9 Audi S4. You may be wondering, what is OBDeleven? Well, according to the box, it's an evolutionary car diagnostic tool designed specifically for Volkswagen Group vehicles. Basically what that means is it's a fancy code reader, and it's also a coding tool, meaning you can modify or activate certain vehicle functions and parameters with it. It's similar to other products on the market such as Carly that you may have heard of, but OBDeleven is the brand name or the product specifically for Volkswagen, Audi, etc. Before we get into what I've done with my S4 specifically, I'll give you guys a quick overview of how to set up and use OBDeleven. The first steps, of course, are to unbox the device, locate your car's OBD2 port, which is generally under the dashboard on the driver's side, and plug it in. Once you're plugged in, go ahead and turn your car's ignition on, but don't start the engine, and open up the OBDeleven app on your phone. If you haven't downloaded it, go download it now. It's on iOS and Android. As you can see, there's a big button here that says connect. Obviously, I'm the only one here, so it's just going to be mine that's showing up. It'll process for a few seconds and then put you to this screen where you have to input your super secret PIN, which I think that's mine. Yep, there we go, detecting vehicle. And it'll take a few seconds to load. You can see it's showing up as an A4, but it is obviously an S4. Once it's fully connected, this is what our home screen now looks like. Obviously, you can see we now have a giant button that says tap to scan. That's if you want to clear or read any error codes that your car may have, check engine light or whatever. Down at the bottom, on the right side, you'll have apps, which are your one-touch apps, your quickly activatable functions. I've done quite a few of these, and I'll show you how those work in a moment. On the left side, you have your vehicle info, and control units is where you're going to go in and do your long coding, if there's anything you want to do like that. I would be a little bit careful with that if you've never done it before, because obviously you don't want to mess something up with your car. So if there's something specific you want to do with actual long coding, then it's probably best to find a good set of instructions on how to do it, and don't just go in here and change things. Going back to those one-click apps, that's actually all I've done so far with the S4. My previous car, the Volkswagen Alltrack, did require some long coding to activate the Euro-style taillights. I'll link that video down in the description. But that said, most of the functions that you're going to want to modify are going to be available within those one-click apps. Obviously, it does vary car to car, but I'll run you through a few things quickly of what I've done so far on this car. First up, I did a few things with the lights. One thing I did on my Alltrack that I really wanted to do again was to keep the daytime running lights on when you put the turn signal on. However, it's not entirely possible with this car because the turn signal does use part of the same LED strip that the running lights uses. Of course, a different color, but anyway, what I was able to do was to add a sort of fade effect when you put the turn signal on and off, and I think it looks rather nice. Another thing, which you just saw in that clip as well, is I changed the comfort indicator, the little thing where you hit the turn signal once and it just flashes a couple times for a lane change. I changed that from 3 to 4. I also added the ability to do Euro-style parking lights, which is basically just where the parking lights only light up on one side of the car or the other. It's something I'm probably never actually going to use because I don't often find myself parallel parked at night, but it's still a fun thing to be able to do, and certainly confuses people. I also did two really nice driving related things. For one, I completely wiped out the auto stop start system, which is nice because now I don't have to hit the button to disable it every time I get in the car. I also changed the strength of the active lane assist. It's not a feature I use very often, but this car does have Audi's active lane centering technology, and it did make a noticeable difference when I made it stronger. As a result, I've now started to use it more often. It's really nice on the highway. It does a good job of keeping you in your lane, it doesn't bounce back and forth, and it takes gentle curves really well. It's just a nice little thing to have. And finally, the last thing I did was to disable the auto unlock on park. Basically, when you put the car in park, it would automatically unlock all the doors. I don't really like that, and most cars have a setting to change it in the infotainment system. For whatever reason, this one doesn't, so I turned it off. And now you can just pull the door handle and it'll unlock, and everything else will stay locked until then. I'm actually going to go ahead and try something else right now too, and that is Scandinavian DRLs. Basically, it'll use the taillights as daytime running lights, in addition to the normal ones on the front. It is mandatory in some European countries. It's not required here, obviously, which is why it doesn't do it by default, but I've seen lots of other people do it, and so I want to give it a try. I've already got it pulled up here, so all I'm going to do is just change this value, if you can see that, from off to on. It's that simple. It costs 10 credits. I'll talk about the credits and pricing model and everything like that in a little bit. It says done. Oh, well, the taillights are on now. So let's see what it looks like on the front. Okay, two things I just noticed up here. For one, it turned on this little orange side marker light, which isn't the worst. I could live with that, but I don't really like it because the rest of the running lights are just white. But also, just out of curiosity, I just put the turn signal on and it disabled the little fade effect that I showed you earlier, which is something that most people are probably never going to notice, but I really like it. So I think I'm actually going to turn these back off. That's actually a good segue into something else I wanted to mention, which is the fact that OBDeleven and all of these sort of similar products, none of these are ever going to be completely perfect. Like I said before, the availability of certain functions does vary to car, which is to be expected, but how well the functions actually work is a little bit hit or miss. And it's not the end of the world, but it's just something you should know going into it. Speaking of the taillights, actually, one thing I would love to do on this car is separate the brake lights and the turn signals, do Euro-style taillights like how I did on my Alltrack. Unfortunately, from the reading that I've done online, the only way to do that on the B9 in the US is to buy new taillights. And then you also have to do new wiring, and it's just not really worth it. These look fine. The last thing I want to talk about in this video is cost, because I got a few comments on my video with my Alltrack saying that it's messed up how you have to spend money on credits after you've already bought the thing, and etc. Now, everybody's case may be a little bit different, but I bought mine about 2 years ago. It was around Christmas time, I think, and as a result of that, I bought the Pro Edition, or rather, I got it as a gift, but I got the Pro Edition and a whole bunch of credits included for free. I don't remember what it was, but I think it was about 1,000 or somewhere around there. And now, 2 years later, I've hardly used half that, I think, and I've used it on 3 or 4 different cars since then. So honestly, if you're going to be using it a lot, yes, you are going to have to spend more money on credits, but I think for the majority of people, it's not that big of a deal. What may be a bigger deal for most people, though, is the fact that OBDeleven recently announced they're changing access to their Pro Edition to a subscription service. Now, the Pro Edition is basically just what allows you to do long coding and adaptions and a few other little things. And when I got mine, it was included for free as part of the bundle that I bought for life. Now, the good news is that if you bought it prior to June 15th of this year, you have the Pro features for life. You're grandfathered in. But if you bought it after June, you're now going to have to pay a yearly subscription. And is that worth it? Well, I guess it just depends on how much you're going to be using it. And honestly, for most people, I don't think it's worth it, because like I said, I've only used it on 3 or 4 cars over the last 2 years, meaning I've only used it a handful of times. And I've actually only used the long coding once. So I guess it's up for you to decide how much you think you're going to be using it, and therefore whether it's worth it. But personally, for me, I'll say that I'm glad I had the old version. So with that said, that's where I'm going to wrap this video up. If you enjoyed it or found it informative, give it a thumbs up, or consider subscribing for plenty more content with this car and others.
Dive into you.